Today we have an international audience, and let me take this opportunity to say good afternoon to everyone. I've been asked with a moment's notice to step up here to replace Mr. Whitaker, who was caught in traffic. And so, like a good old Boy Scout, we must always be prepared. And here I am. So, good afternoon, Honorable and former Prime Minister, Mr. Hampton Green, Dr. Jennifer Basdale, Mr. Lincoln Lewis, TUC, ladies and gentlemen, and you're all honored guests. I am no stranger to you all, and let me also welcome our viewers and listeners on Benchtop Radio and the Village Voice Facebook page. So, welcome, and even though we have really social distanced ourselves, our international audience are also part of what is happening. So don't feel it's just those of us here. We've got a full house and a full audience. And this afternoon, even though we have started a little beyond the expected time, it is good to know that we've been able to put everything in place and we're now ready. So let us start off, please, by standing and repeating the national pledge. I pledge myself to honor always the flag of Guyana and to be loyal to my country, to be obedient to the laws of Guyana, to love my fellow citizens, and to dedicate my energies towards the happiness and prosperity of Guyana. And if you remain standing, Mr. Lewis, who is supposed to be saying our prayers. Oh, pastor's here. So, yes, please do.
You get a mic.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we thank you for the privilege you've given us of the breath of life. We thank you that as a nation, for 55 years, you've given us that privilege. To trials and tests we have come. But today we stop to say thank you. Thank you for keeping us by your power, by your grace. Out of 6 different races, we have come as one nation, one people, one destiny. You are the God of all grace. And so today, as we celebrate 55 years, we ask for that grace be poured upon our nation. Bless us as a people. Almighty God, let your grace be showered on this nation through the many challenges that we face. Bless us as we celebrate in our various ways your blessing upon us for 55 years. Give us the strength and the grace that we need to go on to be a better nation, a better people. Bless all those who contributed to bringing us to this point. Honor them, Father. We thank you and we salute them for their sacrifice and labor of love in leading our nation. Now as we go on, we simply ask that you might take our nation and you will cause it to blossom and bloom in ways that we've always said we have the potential to do. Honor them, Father. Bless your people. Bless and prosper Guyana in every way. As we share this ceremony together, grace us with your presence. Bless each part of this program. We thank you as we honor and salute you. In Jesus' name,
Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. We gather this afternoon here, ladies and gentlemen, to celebrate in our own way the 55th anniversary of our independence. For those of us who were here earlier, we witnessed the arrival of the Queen's visit to Guyana. I think it was in 1963. Ms. Green will educate me better if I'm wrong. And we looked back at what Guyana was. And if you listen to any of Burnham's speeches, the late Lyndon Forbes House, Burnham, our founder leader, first executive president, and the real leader and father of this nation, because it was he who brought us independence, along with others. So when we are going to talk about our heroes, we're going to talk about those who were present and who were involved in the real struggle to make certain that Guyana not only becoming independent, but then years after became a republic. And so here we are today that we could look back and reminisce on what took place on the night of May 25th, 1966, where we saw the golden arrowhead being raised and the Union Jack being lowered. And so, as a proud nation, irrespective of all the difficulties, one which includes the rationale for this event here today, but thanks to Mr. Lewis, his vision, and those who supported him in ensuring that those of us who, for some reason or the other, are probably not wanted where the official celebrations are taking place, we could have our own. And I think it would be a good gesture to move forward after now and do our own thing if it comes to that. So here we are today, and welcome. And to even further welcome you more, I'll invite Mr. Lyndon Lewis, General Secretary of the Guyana Trades Union Congress, to come forward and offer the welcome. Oh, Mr. Griffith here. All righty.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chairperson. I would wish to assume that protocol has been established, but I do not think any harm will be done. All right, to single out a few persons for special recognition. Former President and Chief Citizen, former Mayor, the Evergreen Hamilton Green, and is it his wife? I'm not seeing too clearly. And Mrs. Green, who I've not seen for many moons. Principal of Vocational Labour College, Mr. English, and not the latest, blinding me. However, and all other invitees, special friends, colleagues, I bid you warm welcome to this simple but yet significant occasion to commemorate and celebrate the fifth, we meet on the eve of the 55th anniversary of Guyana's political independence. I think it is more than important that the Guyana Trades Union Congress, in collaboration with the Gtuc Labour College, sought to have this occasion held today. At a time when it appears as though even our political leaders seems to be paying little or no attention to the significance of this occasion. And while I say it is more than important to have had this collaboration between the TUC and the Critchlow Labour College, and I must note Critchlow, emphasize Critchlow in the Labour College, because it was Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow that lit the torch for the independence struggle of Guyana. We must not forget that. And therefore, we have more than a passing interest as labor leaders in ensuring that that struggle that started by Critchlow, culminating in political independence on May 26, 1966, is forever cherished by us, not only as labor leaders, but as citizens of this country of ours. As I welcome you to this auspicious occasion, it is apposite for me to reflect on an event that took place when that Union Jack was being lowered and the golden arrowhead hoisted. There is what is being referred to as that familiar embrace. When Prime Minister Bonner and Minority Leader, Opposition Leader Jacob embraced. For those who were present to see and those who read after to read. Today, as we know it, I think it will be somewhat of a miracle for us to see our current political leaders talking, much less embracing. It seems as though we have lost that civility, we have lost that maturity. Anyhow, it is not to be to say much more. We have more than a guest speaker. We have an elder and we have a friend who knows far more than the little I know. It was my task only to welcome you, and I warmly welcome you on behalf of the Guyana Regional Congress from Critchlow Labour College to this solemn but yet very significant occasion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitaker. And at this time, I'd like to invite from Linden, very stalwart, outstanding, and professional young woman, served in our parliament, and I'm sure what she brings to us today will certainly add to the flavor of independence. Leaders, please let us welcome Vanessa Piscu.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Please come. First of all, I would like to, on behalf of my family, myself, and also the region that I traveled from this afternoon, region on 10, I'd like to say happy pre-independence to all my Guyanese brothers and sisters. This afternoon, I will be reading excerpts from Martin Carter's collection of poems of resistance. I come from the nigger yard. I come from the nigger yard of yesterday, leaping from the oppressor's hate and the scorn of myself. From the agony of the dark hut in the shadow and the hurt of things. For the long days of cruelty and the long nights of pain. Down to the white streets of tomorrow, of the next day. Leaping I come. Who cannot feel will hear. In the nigger yard I walk naked like a newborn. Naked like a stone or a star. It was a cradle of blind days rocking in time. Torn like the skin from the back of a slave. It was an aching floor on which I crept on my hands and on my knees, searching the dust for a trace of a root, of the mark of a leaf, or the shape of a flower. It was me walking bare feet, meeting strange faces like those in dreams or people. When the whole world turned upside down and no one knows which is the sky or the land. Which heart is among the torn or the wounded. Which faith is among the strange and the terrible. Walking about, groaning between the wind. I come from the nigger yard of yesterday, leaping from the oppressor's hate and the scorn of myself. I come to the world with scars upon my soul, wounds upon my body, fury in my hands. I turn to the history of men, the lives of people. I examine the shower of sparks, the wealth of the dreams. I am pleased with the glories and sad with the sorrows, rich with riches, poor with the loss. From the nigger yard of yesterday, I come with my burden. To the world of tomorrow, I turn my strength.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. And I'm sure we could give her another round of applause. Very compassionate, inspiring, and educational. As we move along our program, our next speaker is the person to give us the feature address. While I know this gentleman, and I've known him for quite a while, sometimes in order to make certain the right kudos are given to people, and the right salutations are given to them, and the right credits are given to them, you certainly need to do your research and then come and do the correct information when you're going to invite someone to speak. However, I think with my knowledge of him and my own experience, I could maybe mention a few things about him. If you had been watching the video presentation before we started this afternoon, you'd have noticed a younger form of Mr. Hamilton Green. And I say younger because he's just aged a little bit, but he's still young. Young in knowledge and young in wisdom. And there is no better a person whenever you're going to talk about the struggle, the plans, the meetings, and everything that has to do with Guyana's independence. In today's day and age, the only person who is competent, has the knowledge, and is authorized to speak about our independence, the road to independence, and in many instances, the journey after the attainment of independence. As you know, Mr. Green served as a minister of government, and I wonder if I could remember some of the portfolios he had. I know he was Minister of Works and Hydraulics, Minister or Vice President of Health, Housing and Labor. Anybody else could remind me? What other portfolios he had? Maybe he'll tell us when he comes up. But he subsequently reached to the second highest office in the land, Prime Minister. Of course, he acted as president on many an occasion, so he certainly did reach the heights that he wanted to accomplish. And if you ask him privately, he will tell you that apart from being a politician, the only time he ever did anything outside of a government structure or a political structure was his job as a clerk at Transport and Harvest Department. I don't even know if he could remember those days. Maybe he could. There's so many things that happened years over. But he continued and he became the mayor of Georgetown. And if my memory serves me right, the record has it that he has been the longest serving mayor in Georgetown. So that's another accomplishment. But more than that, he's always accompanied these days by a very charming young lady, his wife, Dr. Jennifer Bastio. And so he has all the attributes, including, if I should segue and say, romance on his side. So please join me in welcoming our former Prime Minister, former Mayor of Georgetown, the Honorable Hamilton Green, our main speaker this afternoon.
Please sit. Mr. Master Ceremonies, let me thank Bobby for his very fulsome introduction. I'm glad he didn't forget my better half. Or both of us are in serious trouble. Come chairperson, we met today to celebrate, or perhaps to mark, the 55th year of our political independence as a nation. In the first instance, it is not without significance that we gathered here in this prominent and important building and institution, the Christian University College. Because the march took and the struggle for independence relied heavily on the enthusiasm, the vision, and the courage of our workers. So that this event has multiple significance. We recall perhaps that Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow may have been influenced in 1917 by the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. So he took up the torch, and even though he did not articulate specific constitutional changes, his mantra, his effort was to bring dignity to the people and to the workers in this country, to relieve them from the yoke and bondage of the past, of imperialism and the tragic situation of being colonial subjects. the struggle continued, and therefore, to meet here in the empire of the workers is significant. We remember those workers and their leaders. Ayub Eden, Richard Ishmael, even my friend Harry Ladd, Cecil Cambridge, Joseph Henry Polgar, the giants. They paved the way for Burnham and Jagan to lead the charge after the 50s for independence. And thank God, Norman Whittle said that Krishna lit the torch. He's right. Fortuitously today, we have a young man who has taken up the cudgel, so to speak, and is taking that torch to its ultimate. I refer to our brother Lincoln Lewis. Supported by the likes of Norman Whitton and others. And we must not ignore the work of these men, because today we mark independence. But if I may tamper with the nuances of the English language, we are yet to achieve the ultimate of freedom, and in particular, liberation. Liberation from the philosophy which enslaved our ancestors and brought some here as indentured laborers. That philosophy, that thinking, I believe still exists today. And when I listened on May Day to my good friend Lincoln, he alluded to the behavior pattern of certain expatriates organizations, where there still exists a contempt, a disregard, and a disdain for workers. We must put an end to that. As Brother Whittaker said, the torch was lit. To use an old phrase, a luta continue. The struggle continues. I hope that at the next phase of our struggle, the validity of the workers will come forth, and we'll at least reach the point of true freedom and liberation. At the political constitutional level, one may suggest that struggle for freedom was mankind by nature wants to be free. But that freedom is often circumscribed by conditions in his or her environment. So the need for freedom always existed. And the earliest note we have is our American brothers who roamed the meadows and the hills of this country as so-called freemen. And what we are not often told is that long before the advent of the Europeans, which has been romanticized, they have turned rascals into heroes, but that's another matter. Long before that, the Africans came to this country in bands of boats as freemen to trade with their American brothers. And there they certified the necessity and the need for people to exchange views as they did with our Army brothers, not as subordinates, but as freemen. So that's the first evidence that we always wanted to be free. You know the story of the various uprisings, 1763, Coffee, 1823, Damon and others. And the struggle continued and took specific form during the First World War, when colonials sought to get away from the British. And I shall say something a little later. Don't underestimate the guile, the perspicacity of the British. They may not today be a superpower in military terms, but it's the only country I know from modern history that controls so many territories from a little island. When the mantra was, the sun will never set on the British Empire. But Churchill didn't cater for the likes of my good friend Critchlow and others, who particularly after the so-called Second World War, determined that if we could fight to defeat the Germans, they're also entitled to be free. So India went first, British India, split up in several parts, but that's part of history. In Guyana, our effort was stultified and suffocated when the suspension took place in October of 1953. But I should be talking about that in extenso on Friday. After that episode, there were elections, and there was a conference in response to the demand for independence in 1960. That conference settled the details for a new constitution, which took place in 1961 in the form of elections. So generally agreed and accepted that at that point in time, the logical step, the next step, should be total self-government leading to independence. But as my friend would say, in ting the regular. So we had some problems. And what I say must be taken as lessons for the future. We need to regurgitate history without attempting to put it in the present context of what is happening today in Guyana. A sad and sorry situation, which ought to be changed and corrected if we are to achieve the vision of our ancestors and make Guyana a real place of one people, one nation, one destiny. It is not going to be easy, but we're going to make the struggle and make the effort. Matter of fact, I would like to know, my last daughter once told somebody when they asked her who she was, she said Mixinese. And maybe we need to get some more Mixinese into the political fray so that we can fully make the dollars and the mix-up people one people. I'm not here to promote the candidacy of my wife, because it means she will not be looked after me then. But seriously, comrades, in 1960, we moved to 61 elections. Elections were interesting. Those elections were marked by the heightening, and at this stage I'm not pointing fingers to anyone, heightening of the racial divide It started, mind you, in 1838. Don't let anybody fool you. It started in 1833. We must put our history in context. When the slaves earned their freedom, and instead of paying them a decent wage and offering them humane conditions, the plantocracy brought in immigrants from China, Madeira, and India. And since I'm in a labor environment, what they in fact did was to promote scam labor. We don't like to use those terms because we want to be pleasant today. So the story started a long time ago. And the flight of the ointment has always been our Earth's wire masters. So the first point I want to make as we celebrate independence is that our leaders must have the good sense and the understanding of the world to put aside petty differences and get together by the time we have another independence celebration and work out, as my friend Victor said, using civil and civilized language, and stop this belief that started years ago that Ali put up. And to say to them, so long as we have the workers in the struggle, it never happened. But after 61 elections, where the PP got, and remember before that, there were 57 elections, which the PP fought on two fronts, the Boronite factor and the Jacobite factor. But then, as I'm saying, the process was marred by this racial story called apartheid. We cannot intelligently look at Guyana, hope for a fruitful tomorrow, unless we have the knowledge and the courage to analyze the things that created our problems. We can't sweep things under the carpet, as some people seem anxious to do. It is not sensible. And my wife, who's a doctor, will tell you, you can't cure a disease unless you know where it is and where it came from. And on this day, I ask you to analyze the circumstances which predated May 1966 and the threats we are having today as so-called free people. And the next goal, I've been arguing, is to educate, so we should agitate, and really liberate. Liberation comes from both within and without. So when the boys went up to London, Dr. Jagan saying, independence now, right now. And he had his attorney general who had prepared a constitution. We called it, right, pejoratively, something constitution. And told us and the country, arrogantly, that we have to live with that constitution. We didn't accept it because it was obviously myopic. In London, at the first conference in 1962, looking at Guyana, divided along racial lines, we argued that we needed certain changes. One, to change the method of elections and move away from the first past the post system to proportional representation. Two, to keep the voting age at 21. And three, Borden argued as a non-negotiable that elections should precede the fixing of a date and the granting of independence. Chelly and his group said, out of the question, independence now. He went all over the world seeking support. There was that rocking chair meeting with John Kennedy, and lacking the command of words. When Kennedy asked him, Dr. Jagan, are you a communist? He waffled. When he asked Burnham the same question, Burnham spent a half hour giving a lecture on the difference between socialism, communism, East and West. And they were so frustrated, they referred to Burnham as ambiguous Mr. Burnham. You couldn't penetrate Burnham's acumen. So that Jacob got 20 seats then, PNC got 11 million, of course got 35 seats. But when we looked at the figures, the PP got 42.6% of the total votes, and the PNC got 41%. So we said something's wrong. Because in our circumstances, race has become, unfortunately, a major element. And people then, and partly still now, did not vote based on principles, based on what you would offer the country, but based on the nasty thing called race. Conference broke up, resumed in 1963, and the British warned the parties that if they couldn't find a way forward, you ain't getting independence. That's frightening everybody. And what is interesting about that conference, everybody stuck to their guns. And for some reason which I can analyze later, Dr. Jagan told the British secretary that he had great faith, his exact words in quoting, he had great faith and confidence in the British sense of fair play and justice, and therefore suggested they should break the deadlock. As we elect Cherry Jacob, the problem was, he educated in the United States and didn't understand the finesse and the enormity of British diplomacy. Burnham, on the other hand, apart from being brilliant by himself, studied in Britain and could penetrate British movements. So after Jagan said he had faith, he turned to Burnham and the yard and told Burnham, who reluctantly agreed because earlier Burnham asked for plebiscite to come back and let's settle the matter. In the meantime, Dr. Eric Williams was trying to find the motive of Van Dyke and invited parties from the three groups. I was part of the PNC delegation from that. But Eric Williams didn't go beyond what happened at the 62 conference. So to make a long story short, the boys signed, and another lesson, particularly this time, your leaders must be careful what they sign. It's like some women going to marriage. I know that the man is a woman, and they sign. We go in a room with these experts and sign. So caucus to deliver lessons, So Burnham was forced to sign. And the British, after fantastic analysis of the conditions in Ghana referring to race, etc., came out with what we know is now history. One, we'll change the electoral system to proportional representation. Two, we'll retain the voting age at 21. And three, elections before independence. End of story. Cheney came back furious because of the bodies would say he gets set up. But that's not my business, now your business. He signed. He signed. He signed. And all you young ladies, be careful what you sign. But comrades, he came back furious. At the time, we were having hurricanes in the region. And he said, we can have a hurricane of protests. I don't accuse Dr. Jacob of initiating anything. Because he's a simple man. We had around him some ragamuffins. And so that statement translated into murder, mayhem, and marginal lines, particularly along the corridors of the East Coast. Elections were held. Similar results. The first coalition, therefore, was between Burnham and JPR. And so they formed the government. We went up to London on the 2nd of November 1965. It was a tedious conference because even though we had Ramphel there as the official legal officer, there were things that Burnham wanted that the British were advancing. But those of you who understand the skill of false bonding, and President no much skill. So one of the things that was agreed to was that within a certain number of years, we didn't have to return to London, but that the Parliament could take Guyana as a member of the Commonwealth, but to republican status, which we did in 1970. So briefly, that is the story of our march to independence. But my friends, it was not easy. Many lives were lost, many villages destroyed, and communities damaged. For records, there are two incidents which I remember very clearly. Because at that time, Bobby, in describing my many portfolios, forgot to mention that I was general secretary of the PNC in difficult times from 1962 when things were rough. So that the two incidents I remember was one in June when a permanent secretary, Mr. His name, Abraham, Arthur Abraham. You see the value of the right. Give her a round of applause. Arthur Abraham was permanent secretary to the office of the Premier. He was devout Roman Catholic and part of what we call local rights. He was transferred according to the PP on promotion. So you move a man from the Premier's office and you promote him to, I think, Minister of Works. There's some sort of story to us. We suspect he was passing secrets to Peter Legar. But in June of 64, lived in a beautiful three-story building not far from the Brigham Cathedral. The house was put on fire, and Abraham and 6 of his children perished. Only his wife, who died early this year, at 90-something, saved. They jumped in and saved. One terrible incident, apart from others, was the Son Chapman. In July the 6th, Son Chapman was a launch owned by a party comrade, Norman Jacob Chapman. Norman moved from Sussex with Cocoa to Mackenzie at that time, or Wisdom, depends on which we start. And the records show that a gentleman called Paddy Man brought a bag of paddy to take to Linden, which never traveled. And all kinds of stories are told, but we suspect that it was a time bomb which exploded at Fort Dyer in the River, killing 40 odd. All were comrades of the PHC. All were born ethnically. So it ignited another tension in our society. It's against that background that we raised the golden head, arrowhead, on the 25th, 26th of May, 1966. But we must remain hopeful. And I ask my friends in the labor movement to transmit to the workers the importance of being able to analyze the international situation in terms of Guyana. We can talk about those and those people. It's the same old story. But unless, and this is my plea, the major political entities understand that the Indian mustn't think the African is his enemy. And the African mustn't think the Indian is the enemy. The enemy is the system. With imperial exploitation as the base, and they're willing to exploit us, our natural resources in sugar, bauxite, gold. Look how they're destroying the environment. Nobody saying anything. Will we get the optimal benefits as we celebrate independence from what the Creator has given us, bountiful of oil? Already we see indications that the big boys get in 90 and we can get 10, and inside that 10, sort of families going to get 8. I ain't saying nothing else. So that we're going to be left with coast. And I urge you, therefore, comrades, on this special day, to use your influence wherever and however you can to prevail upon our political leaders, our political directorate, that in the interest of this country, in the interest of being not only to mark, but to celebrate joyously the next independence, we've got to sit and talk. Because no group coming to local elections can help us. They have their own agenda. If you put one in office, you leave the other outside, you can massage them. Not manipulate, massage them. And that's the game that is being played. And that is why Brother tried so hard in the 80s to find a way of working with Dr. Jiggle and the people at that time. So, comments in brief. I don't want to do a chronology, but this is where we are today. And I urge you to A, respect and honor Lincoln for bringing us together in this environment. And that you must pass the message on to the young people so that they can know what are the real issues and not foolishly embrace one group and not understand the real story. As Lincoln said to me, he spoke to me earlier today, and he used the biblical words for what he said. The harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. Let us pledge ourselves, and all of us here, that over the next few days, weeks, and months, we'll try to increase that labor force to give vitality, to give movement, so that what took place on the 26th of May 1966 will mean freedom and liberation. I promised a young man who called me to ask how did we arrive at the date 26th of May. Well, the war was in the books, I tell you the real story. At the conference, Burnham asked that the 23rd of February to celebrate coffee, the major independence date. The British said we didn't have enough time to prepare, etc., etc. Peter de Guerre, on the other hand, wanted August the 1st because he said that is the date that the slaves were freed by the British. But we want to know to take a date that was identified by the British, no matter what the circumstances. So the boys looked at the calendar, and the British official, not recognizing how brilliant Bono was, said that the date between 23rd of February and the 1st of August is the 24th of May. Bono spied. He said it's a clean official birthday. And then he reminded us that the most advanced constitution we had in 1784 by the Dutch was promulgated on the 26th of May. So that's how we ended up in the 26th of May. And I think somebody mentioned the lack of enthusiasm by certain people about our anniversary of independence. I don't accuse anybody, but maybe it is because the PP delegation was not present when the date for independence was fixed and agreed, and the arrangements for constitutional change made. They were not present. They were omitted in action. So maybe that's the reason for the lack of enthusiasm. And since they can't change that, there is not that vigor to really honor an important date in our calendar. And these fellows don't think, a certain PP minister told me just after 1992, why they're not enthusiastic about matrimony. He said it's Bono's birthday. I said, well, you don't look at the calendar. Bono was born the 20th of February. And in the Republic Day was the 23rd. The big sahib, you know. He said, I never realized it. That must be taken seriously. And I end by saying, be careful with the propaganda that we spoil now. Be careful with the things you are told. I now have my radio on. I only listen to Bobby station, you know. I ain't got time for the others. Because I know what I will hear. Comments a good anniversary. My wife has just signaling I'm talking too long. And says, I have to go home. and find a place to sleep. I want to thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give Mr. Green another round of applause. Of course, as I indicated before I introduced him, if you really want to know the facts and the truth about everything that has to do with our independence, that's the man we need to talk with because he was there. Now, you heard him mention he only listens to 104.1. And there's a reason. There's two things about Light FM. And if you follow the first reason, you will know why. Now, light in GPL standards is spelled L-I-G-H-T. And our light, my light is spelled L-I-T-E. And the difference is because my light does not go off. So Light FM with L-I-T-E stays on. GPL, L-I-G-H-T. You know what happens there. All right. And to hear some more, because tomorrow morning at 8:30, I'll have Mr. Green as my guest on the radio. And then I'll be able to ask him questions, which we could not have done today. But I'll be able to ask him questions so he could touch some more on some issues that he may not have been able or he wanted to do this afternoon. Obviously, because we fitted into a time window. So join Light FM tomorrow morning at 8:30. Well, as usual, the radio should be on light anyway, so I shouldn't have to tell you to join the light in the morning. But at 8:30 tomorrow morning, Mr. Green will be on and we'll have our conversation about Guyana's independence. Now that we've done that, before we do the flag raising, I'm going to ask Mr. Lincoln Lewis to come forward and he wants to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Bobby, for doing this job. I am confused at this time, wondering to know where I should start. I mean, you were the sage. This is the university of life. Listening to you. Being so lucid, constructive, and definitive in what you say. I am glad that these things are being recorded. I say this is the university of life because we are getting it from people who live it, not people who read it. I want to tell you that we always want to say thanks to you. Not only for tonight, but for all the work you've done over the years. But I'll tell you this, while I say thanks to you, and while I ask the audience to give you another round of applause. You see that light? It takes positive and negative to give you that light in this world of science. It always takes two to tango. I want to say tonight, thank you, Jennifer, for doing a good job. I mean, I am allowing you to go home and to sleep well. Let me tell you, I want to say thanks to my brother Norris. Norris is a soldier who always prepared for the battle at every time and every moment. I remember when we were putting the program together, I was talking with the principal assistant secretary who worked with me to put this program together. That's what it's like. We need somebody to do the voter dance, somebody to do the ceremony. However I can. So what will we do? She said, here, call Brother Wisdom. He's always there for the moment. Norris, thank you. Thank you for being a brother, and thank you for being an ardent soldier. Good riddance. I want to say thanks to my comrades from the trade union. Ian Andrews. Thank you. This is Charlotte. Thank you. Thank you. I see the treasurer of the team is here. Thank you. Ms. Felix, the assistant organizing secretary. Thank you. And I also see the registrar of the Bristol College, Pastor Walcott. And I tell you this, no matter how the work shall be, I have a secretary, not my secretary, my executive assistant, Ms. Jocelyn Leon. Together with the admin officer at Bristol College, Viola McGregor, I'll tell you something about them. They are two strong women, good soldiers. One comes from Quarantine, yes, McGregor from Quarantine, Mr. Young from Hackbrat. Two strong Borussia women. They are my soldiers. They are women who will take a bullet for me. They are committed. They have looked my back. I saw the supervisor for the canteen. She's in here. The English. She always feeds me well. She makes sure that whatever I need to eat is prepared. Leah thanks for the snacks you prepared. And I see the staff of very folks also around. They have decided that they're going to give us some help. And my Borussia friend and comrade, Leland Saul, is here too. Give her a round of applause. I like to see them. I mean, keep doing it. Danny, you're doing a perfect job. Keep it moving. There are times I miss the call and I call the wrong phone. And I say, I'm going to call you. And I will hear, and you're calling back. I said, this is me phone. So I made a commitment that me and I'm going to buy a phone that me and I'm going to use. Why don't we keep it? Once again, let me say thank you. Those who I may miss out, like my comrades from the who have made the communication available today for those who are distance and miles away to understand what we. Let me say thanks to all. And let us all give ourselves a round of applause. Thank you very much.
All right, we're just about to come to the end of our formal proceedings. We will have a short interlude of music, and then we're going to proceed outside for the flag raising. But before we go, I'd like to recognize the presence of Linus. Linus is a former Calypso monarch of Guyana, I think, at one point, and also a former member of the Guyana Defense Force, one of the founding members. Linus, welcome, and thank you. So we're going to take a short break, ladies and gentlemen, and then we will come back and do the flag raising. Thank you once again for coming.
What they singing? Like roses, like the shining, and show me the one. When I love you, boys and girls, Sunday, Monday, demons, men, all small days, it's still on your mind. Small days, it's still good times.
Okay, folks, we're ready to do the flag raising. If you don't mind stepping outside of the building, and we'll participate in the flag raising. Gentlemen, we are about to witness the hoisting of our national flag, and while we do that, the young people, as they raise it, I'm inviting you to sing the first and the last stanzas of our national anthem.
Since upon the past day, coming and go back down, come and go back down, long, long time, coming and go back down, come and go back down, come and go back down.
And make us to be more worthy of heritage, land of the free. Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
And that's our coverage for this afternoon. We want to thank you all for viewing simple but effective anniversary 55th Independence celebration here at the Crichelo Labour College under the auspices of the Ghana Trade Unions Congress. And so we want to thank you for viewing. We're going to see you right back here next time on another program by the Ghana Trade Union Congress. We want to thank all of us affiliate, Mark Bench, Cop and team, Village Voice and team, and all the other, and APNU AFC on YouTube. We want to thank all of those persons who are a part of our broadcast today. And we want to wish all of you happy independence. Mr. Ashton Green is here as well. Right? Still holding strong, Mrs. Bastille Green there. Still here. She's still doing what she's doing. All right, and you too. So we're gonna have a little light refreshments, and then we're gonna be basking in the anniversary celebration. So thank you all. This has brought us to the end of our broadcast here live from the Crichelo Labour College in Georgetown, Guyana.